Welcome back to the shop. Today I want to do a book haul. Recently my wife and I went to a couple local bookstores or nearby bookstores. We live in a pretty rural area, so we're not just drowning in bookstores. There's a nearby Barnes & Noble and then a couple other small places. The first one we went to was the Goodwill bookstore. I don't know if y'all have this everywhere, but Goodwill is like a charitable organization. And the Goodwill bookstore, people donate old books. The store sells them for cheap, and then most of that money goes to charity. So this place is always really hit or miss. Usually get books really cheap, but most times when I go in there, I might find one or two cool paperbacks. Today I actually got several hardcovers, which is rare, but I found some pretty cool stuff today, so I'm going to show that off first, and then we went to a second bookstore and I'll show those books afterwards. Alright, so right off the bat, I did get Edgar Allan Poe, 8 Tales of Terror. I have a couple of these small paperback Edgar Allan Poe collections, and I think they're really cool. This is the Scholastic printing. This is from 1978, so it's Scholastic. So this might have been in I don't know if they did Scholastic book fairs back then at school, but this would be for something like that, some kind of book club or book fair. It's really cool. I really like the artwork. Now I'll show this one. I'll show the other one I have as well. I'll put those up. Now next up, now we're getting into, this is really cool. I really did not expect to see this. But this is actually a double set, 3-in-1 volume of Michael McDowell's The Blackwater books. Now there are 6 books in the series. I said each of these collects 2. These are the Avon Book Club editions. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what happened to them, but you can see it kind of ripped up here on the end papers. I'll have to come up with something to try to fix that, but even with those, I think these are awesome. I don't own these books. I have not read all of them either, so finding these was a very pleasant surprise. Right, next up is a book called Gaslight and Ghosts. This is a short story anthology, rather. That's pretty cool. This is the 1998 World Fantasy Convention, UK. Okay. It looks like there's some cool stories and writers in here. There's James Herbert, Brian Lumley, Clive Barker's in here, Lisa Tuttle. There is a Carl Edward Wagner short story in here. I have one video up now, but if you watch this in the future, I should have several. He's one of my favorite writers. So this is really cool. I was excited to find this. The next 3 are by the same author. And this is one of my also favorite writers. And that is, I got 3 Peter Straub hardcovers. I did get Mystery. Mystery is in the same series as The Throat and Coco. Coco's the first one. I want to say Mystery is the second one, but it might be the third. I'm blanking on which one comes first, Mystery or The Throat, but that is. And we also have Floating Dragons. This is a great book. I have the paperback edition of this, but this will be my first hardcover on this one. And then third is Lost Boy, Lost Girl. This was actually my first Peter Straub book. I found it in some sort of thrift shop in Gatlinburg around 2010, and I had never heard of it. I'd never heard of Peter Straub, rather, and I picked it up. So, this looks cool. I read it, and then of course later I found Ghost Story and Coco and a lot of his other works, and so this is a great one. This is also awesome to find and have. So, alright, so right here are what I got at the Goodwill bookstore. They're not all coming up, but there you go. Okay, next up we went to a local bookstore / thrift store. They sell some other stuff in there as well. They also buy books if you have old books that you want to sell. You know, they'll give you a couple dollars for them or give you some store credit for it. And then they'll sell it. They also do have new books, so they're a little bit more expensive than the Goodwill store, but usually a little bit cheaper than like Barnes & Noble or buying a book brand new as well. So starting out, I did pick up a few books that are not really horror, so I'll go through those first. Now, first off, probably my favorite non-genre writer would be Ernest Hemingway, and I did get a couple of Hemingway works. See, this is a collected, unabridged, hardcover collection. Yeah, it's For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Old Man and the Sea, Fiesta, which is another name for The Sun Also Rises. It does have Across the River and Into the Trees. I haven't read that one, and I've heard a lot of mixed stuff as to whether or not it is good or not. So I am going to read it, and we'll see. There's also a couple short story collections, The Snows of Kilimanjaro and The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. As far as short stories go, I did pick up this paperback Ernest Hemingway, the Finca Vigia edition. This is one of the complete short stories. To actually have the complete short stories of Ernest Hemingway, you really have to buy about 3 books, I believe. It might be 4 now. 3 books, but this is one of them, and this is a good one, and it's one I did not have, so I'm very happy to have it. It'll also be, I prefer to read paperbacks, and I really like my hardcovers to be on the shelf and to look nice. So I got those Hemingways. Another one I got, so this is A Century of Noir. It is 32 classic crime stories edited by Mickey Spillane and Max Allan Collins. And so I'm pretty excited for this one. It's got, there is a Max Allan Collins story in here, Stephen Marlowe, Mickey Spillane, John Lutz. So this is a newer collection as well. Lee Brackett is in here. And so if you like, I do like short crime story. I like crime. I like noir. And so this will be, I consider noir and horror to be very close. I think that like non-supernatural horror, right? If you have like a serial killer story or something like that, I tend to think that blends in with crime or detective or noir, just from a slightly different perspective. So I did pick up a hardcover Children of Dune from Frank Herbert. I only currently have the first Dune book, so I am excited for this one. I don't think this is the 1976 edition, so I read this a long time ago, but I'm happy to have it. That way I can put it with Dune. I need to get Dune Messiah. Those are the only 3 that I've read. I didn't really go deep into the series. I just read the first 3. Really liked the first one, the Children of Dune and Dune Messiah. They were okay. I do read science fiction some though. And I do have an Isaac Asimov shelf, and I don't have this one. So I'm excited. Fantastic Voyage 2. Destination Brain. I've never heard of this one or read it, so I'm excited to add it to my Isaac Asimov shelf. Maybe one day I can do a video on that and show what I have. So I think that's cool. So those are the books from the local bookstore that are not horror. We'll kind of get into more of the horror now. So paperback, Robert R. McCammon, Mystery Walk. I've never read this one or heard of this one. I do love this. I do love that cover. I do love that artwork. If it's not coming through, I'll put a photo up. So yeah, this is a really cool one. I don't know if it's a part of a series. I've read a handful of McCammon books, but I don't think I've read this one. This is the 3rd printing from October 1989. Said the first edition was April 1984. That is awesome. This will be my first physical Robert R. McCammon book, and I need to get some more because I really like his work. Next up, the cover on this one's kind of jacked up, but I wanted to grab it anyway. This is one of the Necroscope books. It's Necroscope Resurgence, The Lost Years, Volume 2 by Brian Lumley. I've read a lot of Lumley short stories. I've read a couple novels. I've never read the Necroscope series. So I would be excited to get into that. I'm not sure where this one falls, but it's so rare that something like the McCammon book or the Lumley book is on sale that we find it in one of our local bookstores or thrift stores or anything like that. So I went ahead and grabbed it. We just don't find them local here. You can get plenty of Stephen King, plenty of Dean Koontz, stuff like that, but you just don't see Brian Lumley or Michael McDowell or stuff like that around here. Someone else you don't see that often is F. Paul Wilson. This is The Barons and Others, so this is a short story collection. Dude, I love the F. Paul Wilson Repairman Jack series and the Adversary Cycle series. The Keep and the Tomb, they are great. I love them. I've read a handful of his short stories. I've heard a lot about the story The Barons, but I've never read it. That deals with, I believe, the Pine Barrens in New Jersey. So I'm excited to have this. This is really cool. F. Paul Wilson, he's not really talked about that much. I know a lot of, like, The Keep was made into a movie in the early 80s. It's not a great movie. So he writes, he wrote the Repairman Jack series, which is sort of a cosmic horror, occult detective type series that's really cool. Also, I believe F. Paul Wilson is also a doctor, and he writes a lot of medical thrillers, and a lot of those are supposed to be really good, but he's just not talked about that much anymore. So, and he really should be. He's a great horror thriller. I know he shows up in a lot of older SF collections that I have from like the 80s. So he really needs to be talked about more, maybe. All right, next I picked up this the New Masterpieces of Horror. So this is a Barnes & Noble book. It does, in fact, speaking of F. Paul Wilson, there is an F. Paul Wilson in here. It does say edited by John Betancourt. Now, when was this? 1996. So this is a Barnes & Noble book from 1996. There's Robert Bloch, Harlan Ellison, F. Paul Wilson, Charles Grant, Joe R. Lansdale. The Night They Missed the Horror Show by Joe R. Lansdale is a great horror story. You got Joyce Carol Oates. I haven't read that story, Blind. If that's a good story, I mean, I'm sure it's good. If you've read it, let me know below. So yeah, there's a Peter Straub story in here, Dan Simmons, Ramsey Campbell. So I love short stories. I love collecting these mixed anthologies from various times. And so I was really excited for this one. Now, the last book that I've got, I found, it was printed in 1949. This was a reprint. It's the Collected Stories of M.R. James. It's a small hardcover, and it's really cool. And I mean, as far as like value or whatever, this was like $10. I don't know if that's a good, I'm not buying it I'm buying it because I wanted it, because I like M.R. James and I like this cool old hardcover. So this is probably, I don't know, every time I think about, this is definitely the highlight of today's trip, there's like 4 more highlights. And it's very, like I said, I live in a very rural area with a lot of small towns, places like this and like yard sales and stuff. You get Stephen King, you get John Grisham, James Patterson, you get those guys. You don't even get a lot of Peter Straub. You don't get a lot of, a lot of F. Paul Wilson, a lot of this stuff like this. So I'm very excited to have found it. Very excited to have all of these. Dude, this was a hell of a day for book buying. I'll try to get in for a family photo. All right. So, have you read any of these? Do you have any of these? Do you have, for the Michael McDowell books, I don't just want to put like Scotch tape on it. I'll have to look up the correct way to deal with those, or how to preserve or fix or whatever to do. Maybe Scotch tape is the way, I don't know. But if you know what I can do for them, like before putting the clear cover on it, Let me know. I would appreciate any help. Let me know what you think of these books. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.